Hello and welcome to the Commander Theory podcast. I'm Nick Beatman and I'm here with my friend Zak Mack.
Hello, theorists.
We also have with us today some very special guests. We've got with us Guy and Blake from the Wizard Staff podcast.
Hello.
What's good?
Thanks for joining us, guys. We've got a great topic today. This past couple of weeks, we've been seeing a bunch of spoilers from Strixhaven. Just today, we got the full set. So we're going to be going through all of the legendary creatures and commanders spoiled in this new set. We're going to be talking about how to build around them, how we think they'll fit into the format, and just give you our general thoughts on these new options for Commander. We're also going to be having a separate episode where we go through all the 99 cards, all those cards that fit into the main deck of our decks. And then later on, after we get all the spoils from Commander 2021, the Wizard Staff guys are going to be hosting us on their podcast. So be sure to check that out. But with that, I think we can go ahead and jump into some of these cards. Blake, do you want to read off this first commander?
I'll give it my best shot. All right, we're going to start off with Mavinda, Student's Advocate, 2 and a white legendary creature bird wizard, 2/3 with flying. Then it has an activate ability of 0. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell doesn't target a creature you control, it costs 8 more to cast this way. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Activate only once each turn. This is a bit of a weird card. I don't usually see like the 0 activated cost on cards much anymore.
Yeah, that's some very like 5th edition technology right there.
Old stuff.
And also like this 8 additional cost to do it a certain way, like that is so strange. Why not just say you can't do it? Like, especially considering it's a mono white commander, like you're not going to be able to get to 8 mana.
Yeah, it really seems like they wanted it to be like for Feather, or like in the set there's Killian, but like they didn't want to close out any other opportunities, so we're stuck with this weird clunky looking 0+8 ability. It's really weird.
Yeah,
I was kind of confused because I was like, doesn't Feather put the cards back into your hand once you like target it with her? So why would you need this to like get those cards back? Because it's already going to be coming back anyway. But I guess like, yeah, if you whiff or something, that could be useful. And then Boros, I guess you don't have that kind of recursion. So that this is nice, I guess. It's notable in the 99 for that one deck. But I can't see myself like playing against a deck completely built around this, you know?
Oh, I actually do need to say I mentioned a name of a card that no one knows about, presumably, that we will talk about later. So Killian is a commander that we'll be talking about later in the episode.
Yeah, I think that this is not really a commander that's worth building around just because it's so clearly inferior to Feather. It does like the same thing but worse. Notably, though, there are 4 rebound cards in this color identity that work with this ability because, you know, it says you got to exile the card, but because it exiles itself as part of the resolution, the rebound continues as normal. You get to cast it during your upkeep and it goes back to your graveyard for reuse. So that's an option, but I'm not generally loving Mavinda.
We could probably move on to the next card.
I mean, the only thing that I'd say is like this is a mono white mythic, and I would have hoped for something a little more splashy, but
for sure
it's a little disappointing. I guess I'm next to read. Oh gosh, it's one of those modal double face cards, and okay, did not practice these names as usual.
Oh, don't worry.
This is Mila, Crafty Companion. It costs 1 white. It's a legendary creature, Fox. Whenever an opponent attacks 1 or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. Whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. And then the backside, we have Luca returning, Wayward Bonder, 4 red, legendary Planeswalker Luca. He comes in with 5 loyalty. You can +1, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. If a creature's card was discarded this way, draw 2 cards instead. -2, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of your next upkeep. And then -7, you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. What do we think, guys?
So many words.
That's a lot of words.
So many.
I just read a novella. Yeah.
This is a really interesting direction for Boros. Like Boros Reanimator feels pretty new. I can't think of another commander that fills that exact same niche. To me, the Luca side is a lot more interesting because I feel like there's more potential to build around. Although Mila does have these rewards if you're like playing Planeswalkers, she's very dependent on what your opponents are doing. Your opponents could easily just play around it or just like remove her and then she'll never trigger. Whereas Luca, he sort of gives you a direction to play in. It's a bit more proactive in that like first you're discarding, then you're reanimating, and there's a lot you can do with that.
I'm a little upset to see that like this, whenever a permanent you control becomes the target clause, draw a card, is on this Boros commander. Because I wanted this, I would have loved for something like this to have shown up on a mono white card, just so we can get some good conditional card draw,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things too that really gets me about this is that they're really pushing Boros in this set. This is not the first card that we're gonna see that like pushes Boros in like a weird direction. And I feel like this card in particular pushes Boros in a place that like no one was asking for. like there are things that people were asking for, and this card in particular just kind of did its own thing. They're just like, let's do this. Let's do a Boros split card, but it's planeswalkers or it's creatures, and you're like, oh, I guess I'll take it, but that's kind of weird. that's not what I was expecting. So I think the biggest thing I feel about this is like, who was asking for this? I guess I shouldn't say I'm complaining. I'm not complaining. I'm just confused.
Just in terms of like sort of building around Luca, I think there's a lot of ways to sort of cheat this exile clause. For example, if you have a sack outlet, then you can get it back in your graveyard and it's safe and ready to reuse on a following turn. You can also like use a blink effect to basically cheat the cost and get it back into play without having to worry about it being exiled permanently. So like a Conjurer's Closet or even something cheaper like a Ephemerate could really be useful in making it so that your guys stick around forever.
And I do want to say one thing. This will be my last little thing. Personally, is like I think it's interesting that nowadays they're pushing Super Friends decks in different ways, and that it seems like whenever we see a Super Friends list in a new color identity, it is specifically spun with a certain identity around it. So I do think it's interesting to see like what they thought a fun Boros Super Friends list would look like here.
Yeah, I was kind of just thinking like what Super Friends decks would want this, but thinking about it, it would really just have to be a 5 color one because it can't fit in Atraxa because of the red. I know a few others that kind of miss out on that white opportunity. So I'm just struggling to think, I guess, of like the best deck, Super Friends deck for this. It maybe to say Witherlight Captain, but the front side I like too, just because it kind of reads as like, prevent 1 damage that would be dealt to your planeswalker as like creatures attack it. So that's kind of nice because it helps keep them around a little bit longer. But it does seem like, unless if you Boros, sorry, actually this is Lorehold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the new names are confusing.
Yeah, if this is going to be the Pioneer Lorehold Super Friends deck, I don't really see this popping up in many other Super Friends decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, One last thing I'd like to say about this is just that Luca starts pretty darn close to his ultimate. Like with an ultimate at 7 loyalty and 5 starting loyalty and a +1, like I think it's pretty reasonable to get like maybe a single proliferate, and then you can ult him the turn after you cast him. So that's really fast, and that emblem does seem like it could be really powerful, especially if you're building more of a reanimator deck with a lot of big fatty creatures.
We got a lot of modal double face cards. Do you want to read off the next one, Nick?
Sure. This next one is Blex Vesting. Oh my God. This next one is a tongue twister. Okay. It's Blex Vexing Pest.
Awesome.
And I challenge you all to say that. It is 2 and a green for a 3/2 legendary creature pest. Other pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders you control get +1/+1. Whenever Blex Vexing Pest dies, you gain 4 life. And then the opposite side of it is Search for Blex. 2 black for a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put any number of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 3 life for each card you put into your hand this way. How do you guys feel about Blex?
Front side, no. Sorry to cut you off there, Blake. Front side, no. I think it's cute. And I see people would probably want to build this as like a very casual deck. I'm very interested in the backside though, just in terms of like the 99, because it kind of reads like 4 mana, draw 5, and it taking 15 life. Not a huge deal, especially if you're just going to draw like gas. And it gets around those, pesky effects like Hull Breacher or Spirit of the Labyrinth. Or you could put cards into the graveyard. Like you get that option instead of like putting them on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you put the cards where you kind of want them to be, in a way.
And Guy, what's the name of the front half again?
Blex Vexing Pest.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I was trying to avoid that. I'm just gonna Blexy Boy.
Blexy Boy.
Yeah. And again, maybe he is the pioneer of the bats, insects, pests, snakes, and spiders tribal deck that we've all been waiting for,
Yeah. I mean, I think that, as we say very often, like it just that buff is not big enough. We're gonna need a bigger buff. So
+2/+2.
Yeah,
yeah,
honestly would have been super good, but I just think that the comedy of this card is pretty funny. Like I literally laughed out loud at work when I saw this card spoiled. I was like, Blex, okay, like he's a mega pest. You gain 4 life when he dies, and then I saw the other side and just started cracking up. Like the big stupid feeder rat that you kept as a pet got out, and now it's causing mischief. Like that was pretty funny. But as a card, I think Guy said it best. Like the ability for 4 mana to get 5 cards deep into your deck, maybe put some in your graveyard, that's probably a better route to go. If you can come up with some way to loop Blex, like entering and dying and gaining a bunch of life, that happens in black green pretty easily. I don't think there's a lot of like specific tech for this list at this point in time, other than just like I might want to play Blex over like Ishkana or something like that because it costs 3 instead of 6 or 7 or something that she costs. Like maybe, I don't know. I feel like there's no incentive to do this right now.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I have to really think about this card is like if there's any other like subtypes of creatures that would want to else be put on this card, because pest is a new creature type, right, in this set.
Yeah.
Well, it's being defined differently than it has been in the past. It was on a single card nuisance engine in Mirrodin. Yeah,
that made pest.
Yes, it did. But yeah, I mean that's card is 18 years old. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's the first auto include for this deck then.
Yeah, there you go.
But I guess if you're all okay to move on, there's a doozy of a card next.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Oh man. Okay, so this is Jazzy, Oracle of Arcavios, a 5/5 human wizard for 6 blue. So that's 8 mana. They have discard a card, return Jadzy, Oracle of Arcavios, to its owner's hand. They also have Magecraft, which I don't think we talked about Magecraft, so I'll talk about it here. Magecraft is whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you do X. So Jadzy is specifically when you cast an instant or sorcery or copy them, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 generic rather than paying its mana cost. And if it's a land, you put it onto the battlefield. But wait, there's
Untapped.
more. Untapped even, yeah. But wait, there's more. It has a flip side. This is a modal double face card. The other side of this card is called Journey to the Oracle. It is a sorcery. It costs 2 green, so 4 mana. And there's something to say about that in a little bit. You may put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Then if you control 8 or more lands, you may discard a card. If you do, return Journey to the Oracle to its owner's hand. So you could possibly dump a bunch of lands on the battlefield, bounce it back up to your hand, cast Jadzy. What? who wants to go first? Who wants to talk about this?
I mean, this card's pretty bonkers. I don't think in Simic the 8 mana is really that much of a hurdle.
What?
And even with the other side, the Journey to Oracle, like if you just you kind of want to run like the maximum number of lands in your deck, to like comfortably be able to like cast that, and then you might be at the 8 to then have this bounce back to your hand, and then next turn cast Jadzy. And if she hits the field, I feel like she's going to be kind of a problem to get rid of, just because she has that discard a card and then return her to your hand. So you're never really going to have to like pay that commander tax. So you definitely want to like counter, like
yeah,
don't hesitate. Simic doesn't need more broken cards. And yeah, just this other ability where it's like, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, reveal the top card, you pay 1, you're just going to go off. I don't need to like really go into like how to win in Simic. It's just obvious. Like,
yeah,
do whatever.
I want to say one thing though, that there is a tension built into the card where you want to have mana to trigger. You want to have spells that are cheap that trigger Jadzy, but then you also want to have big splashy things that you can cast with Jadzy. So there is a tension. I think like the deck building process is probably the most fun part of Jadzy, just because you have to figure out where like the ratio of like your lands to cheap like instants and sorceries to big splashy spells are, but one thing also before I forget, if you do open the extended art version of Jadzy, the Journey to the Oracle side has a misprint on it. It says it costs 3 mana, 1 green instead of 2 green. That is not correct. Oops, that's pretty big oopsie on a splashy mythic. But
it's literally pay to win.
God.
Yeah, something that's something just to take note of if you do open the extended art version.
One thing I want to say about this, this is a really unique commander in that you're almost always going to be casting this Journey to the Oracle before you cast your commander, just because, ramp options. And as a result, unlike most commanders, you're going to be casting Jadzy from your hand. So that actually opens up some interesting options for cheating her mana cost. Like 8 is a lot, but you're also on color for things like Elvish Piper or Champion of Ronas, or even like Quicksilver Amulet. So you can get her into play and still have like a decent amount of mana to start the combo rolling. And then this is like this is a great deck for library manipulation, Miri's Guile, Sylvan Library, Brainstorm,
Scroll Rack.
Yes. And as you mentioned earlier, there is this tension between like having the cheap spells to trigger her initially, and then the more expensive things you want to flip into. And one card that I think works really well in this list is actually Glamour Die. So Glamour Die is 1 of blue. For an instant, change the text of target spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one color word with another. Retrace. So you don't care about the actual effect, but retrace just makes it so that you can start Jazzy going again if ever you're forced to stop that combo rolling.
It's interesting. I think, like I said, the deck building like how you win is, I think, an exercise left to the listener, but the getting there, I think, is the most interesting part of this commander for sure.
I think
Broken
one quick
card,
thing.
you broken things.
One quick thing I want to say is I think specifically the Journey to the Oracle side might be good in the 99 of Tatiova and AC decks, where like you draw your hand full of lands, and then they trigger those commanders, and you draw back up. And those decks often have enough density of lands where, okay, I got it back to my hand. Let's play the Journey to Oracle again. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see someone just doing way too much with that.
Should we move on to the next commander?
Yeah, I think if we're all good, this next one is crazy.
Yeah, all right. This is another modal double-faced one. Extus, oh god, I messed that up already. Extus, Auric, Overlord, I think.
Yeah, close
One
enough, yeah.
white, black. 2 for legendary creature, human, warlock. With double strike, and it has magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And then the backside is Awaken the Blood Avatar. 6 black-red sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Create a 3/6 black and red avatar creature token with haste, and whenever this creature attacks, it deals 3 damage to each opponent. So it's Mardu, like Reanimator, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. I can't get over just how big this guy's swords are. Just they're so big. Like, why does this blood avatar need like a sword that's like the size of 4 people standing on top of each other? Like, what are you doing, bud? I don't know. But I think as far as like cards go and like what half you're doing, or we had someone in our Discord who was a patron. They had an idea for this list that was really interesting. It was Mardu, kind of like Feather, where you have like little value creatures, and then you have like other spells that you like would pump Extus with. So it was like an Extus Voltron list using these like utility creatures that you get back when you pump your Extus to like create these loops. And it was a really cool idea. I think this is one of these commanders that we're going to see some off the wall builds for, just because like it kind of has so many like hooks to like hang your different magic hats on. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I've seen on like the competitive side, this card has kind of been compared to like the Timna and Jaska Mad Farm decks. So there's probably some argument there where this could maybe be the replacement. I think the most notable loop in the deck, though, is the one where you like cast Dockside and you have to make 6 treasure tokens. And then you cast Worthy Cause, which is like 1 white mana, and you sacrifice a creature. So you would sacrifice your Dockside, but you would also buy back Worthy Cause. And then you would be able to get your Dockside and recast Dockside, netting you 1 mana. Do that a bunch of times, get 5 billion treasures. Then eventually you would sacrifice Extus with the Worthy Cause, and then recast Awaken the Blood Avatar, like, I don't know, a bunch of times just to get those demons with the big axes and the swords.
They're so big.
Yeah, that seems like a great line. Worthy Cause in general just seems like it's one of the best cards in this deck, because the deck really needs sack outlets just so it can reuse its cheap value creatures, and it needs like this is I think the cheapest buyback spell in this color identity. So it's a way to trigger Extus. It's a way to get your guys in the graveyard. It kind of does everything you need it to do. So that's pretty much like a must include for this list, I think.
Let's move on to the sweet life of Zach and Cody.
Hey,
Oh, no.
Cody. Oh my goodness. Cody, Vociferous Codex, 3 mana, legendary artifact creatures construct. You can't cast permanent spells. Already a downside. 4 mana, tap, add Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green. When you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with lesser mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast the card without paying its mana cost. Put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. That kind of reminds me of something.
So, does anyone have any ideas of like, some cool cards that synergize with a tap ability?
Sure.
me,
I heard about this sweet tech. No, so you can put Umbral Mantle you need to cast some things before you actually cast Cody because of his drawback. But if you get down like Umbral Mantle or Sword of the Parans and a Training Grounds or a Biomancer's Familiar, then you can net mana on the Cody activation, and you also get those delayed triggers just kind of stack up. So after you get this infinite mana, and if you're using Umbral Mantle after you get your infinitely large Cody, the very first spell you cast is going to flip a whole bunch of times. You're going to get many, many, many cascade triggers. So there are some lists that like you can sort of build your deck around that and trying to make that happen. Just playing like a bunch of really good, cheap value cards at like 1 and 2 mana, and then you cast like a 3-drop just to put your whole deck out there. But really, like, if you're just trying to win the game with infi mana and an infinitely large commander, there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah, because it's very clear WotC like does not want us breaking this card, but I think what you just mentioned there, Nick, is probably the way to go. Because when I first saw this card, I was like, "Oh, sweet! I can play Cody, and then I can like enchant them with like my Penman's Aura or my Freed from the Real, and just infinitely tap and untap." But then I'm like, "Wait, I can't do that because Cody would be in the field first, and then it would enchant it, so that doesn't work." So yeah. I'm like, darn it.
Yeah.
But
you need to be in magical Christmas land with your like hypergenesis cards to like kind of get ready to do, or like, is it show and tell? Would show and tell do that? Or
show and tell would. I've actually heard about a CEDH list for Cody that runs hypergenesis as the only like 0 CMC spell in the deck, and then tries to drop in Leveler and Thassa's Oracle for the win. So there's another direction you can go.
Yeah, I just imagine now like the first Sliver, Urza, and like all those other like big guys, and then like this book shows up, and it's like, hey, I can compete.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing about Cody that really gets me, is that like, because the arena, you can buy Cody as like your little guy who sits by you when you play Magic, and I was like, okay, that's a cool little mascot that you can purchase. Like, that's funny. Strixhaven books, whatever. And then they spoiled this card, and I was like, all right, really? Like this, you made him a card? Like, okay, that's fine. Whatever. This whole set has a lot of like Mark Rosewater Odyssey block era jokes and puns and things in the name. When we get to main deck cards on the next episode, there's just so many bad puns all over the place. So everyone brace themselves for that. But Cody's just a mere glimpse at what's to come.
All right, I'm going to start off a cycle that we have. I think all the remaining commanders are cycles. We've gotten through the one-ofs. So this is the first member of the Elder Dragon cycle. This is Shadrix Silverquill, 3 white-black for a 2/5 legendary creature Elder Dragon. It has flying and first strike, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose to. Each mode must target a different player. Target player creates a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life, or target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. What are your thoughts, fellas? What do you think about this first big old dragon?
I like dragons. What's great about this is that it's not pushed too hard, and it's definitely doing something that's different than the Orzhov commanders that we've seen. I say that in quotation marks because this is now Silverquill,
Mhm.
You got that casual like politics side where you want to like it fits in with the flavor of Silverquill, which are like, ooh, we can like use our words to make our friends or foes do whatever we want.
Mhm.
So you're kind of like saying like, here, take a token, hit my friend or hit my opponent, whatever.
Mhm.
Draw a card. I mean, you can use that on yourself too, but you have to at least use one of these on an opponent at all times. I don't know
Yeah.
if I would ever want to target my opponent to draw a card unless
Yeah, unless they had an
unless they
answer.
were really going to make sure they help me out.
Or if they were at 1.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I see this like fitting into the format is like this is definitely a card geared towards more casual audiences, group hug players. We haven't really seen like an Orzhov group hug list, so this in that way is a new archetype, I guess. But it's not like you have a lot of tech for that list, Oh, you, I guess you do now. There'll be some white cards that we can talk about for the 99 of this list if you want to be like a political group huggy commander. But uh, it this there's not just a lot of building around you can do other than like playing Knight of Souls Betrayal, so all the Inklings die, or like just stuff like that, like keeping the benefit that you're giving to your opponents down to the bare minimum while you accrue value with Shadrix's other uh, abilities targeting yourself. So
Yeah, the other thing that I just wanted to say is the art for those like borderless versions. This one in particular, I think, looks pretty sweet. It's a little more experimental. It definitely has like the ink feeling that's that like Silverquill is like trying to portrayal with all their, you know, I'm a writer, I'm a poet kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess this is I wasn't going to mention this, but you brought it up. They said that the artists were super excited with the Silver Quill like art descriptions because they're like, I draw with ink. You want me to draw cool ink stuff? Yeah, yeah, I'll do that. So that it was very popular with the contracted artists who got to do Silver Quill stuff. But I guess it's time to move on to the next dragon if you're all okay with that.
Sure.
Good?
Yeah.
We're good?
Tell us about the next one.
All right. So this is a doozy. So this is Belladross Witherbloom. Belladross is a 4/4 flying elder dragon for 5 black green, so a 7 mana commander. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with whenever this creature dies, you gain 1 life. And then they have the activated ability, pay 10 life, untap all lands you control, activate only once each turn. Wow. Anyone wanna get jumping on this one?
I think this is a really interesting commander. That both of these abilities are pretty powerful, but just having that engine that lets you convert life into mana seems really strong. And when I see that that ability, the first thing I think about is, okay, is there a way I can convert mana back into life, but at a rate that's good enough so that I'm profiting on this cycle? And so a couple things come to mind, like if you set up a reanimation engine and like you're reusing a Kokusho or a Gray Merchant, that's one way you could funnel your mana into gaining a bunch of life so that you're able to activate Belladross repeatedly. You can also use Extort if you're casting a bunch of spells with your deck. Extort will recoup a lot of that life, or Aetherflux Reservoir also. If you're able to cast like 4 spells off of the mana that you have on board, then that'll be enough to at least stabilize so that you're doing all these things but not actively going down on life. Rings of Brighthearth seems really cool. Allows you to stretch your activations further, get even more mana per 10 life payment. But overall, this seems like a really strong commander, and it's just amazing that it pays for itself like that. It alone makes this a really, really powerful option for Commander.
Oh yeah.
I think one thing that I would like to remind everyone is that the activated ability of paying 10 life to untap all lands you control, it says you can only activate it once each turn, but that also means you can use it on your opponent's turns, right? So you can appear tapped out, then pay the 10 life, untap your lands, and then use whatever instant speed interaction you might have. So I feel like you can get some people with that because they're like, oh, he's tapped out, it's fine. And then you're like, ha, nope.
I think you can get him once for sure.
Can't be that sneaky, Blake. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna live in magical Christmas land where you cast like reshape the earth. You get 10 lands, they all enter the battlefield tapped, but then you're like psych, and then you pay 10 life, untap them all. And then there's a few like relatively weak cards that you could follow up with, like Torment of Hellfire, Exsanguinate,
I want to say,
Finale of Devastation.
to like cut you off, I actually don't think that's Christmas land. I actually think that's something that people are gonna do a lot with this commander. You know?
Yeah.
I think
Well, you're right, because like you have black and you have all the like best tutors.
yeah, you have green, and
So,
then even
yeah.
if you're only untapping, like you pay 10 to untap all your lands, even if you only have 6 for some reason, you're able to cast reshape after that, right? So I think your wildest dreams are going to become reality. You will get to do like really big splashy plays like that more than it might have seemed at first.
Excellent.
I'm curious about the rest of you. In my perception, it seems like of all these new Elder Dragons, this one is the most people I've seen excited for.
I don't know. I guess when we go through all of them, I'll maybe say something about it. But I don't actually know if I've gauged the hype for any of them necessarily. This one definitely got the most like, oh no, this is a really good stacks commander, which I think has to be mentioned. Like, this is a nasty, nasty stacks commander if you want to build it that way. Just you get the token to sack with your smokestack. You can untap all of your lands so the Wind Orb doesn't hit you. Like, it just puts you on this axis above what all these other cards allow you to do, that would just hose all of your opponents. So if you want to go not fun, not the guy reshape the earth route, then that's definitely, I think, one of the best options. But I would rather see people do big splashy, I get 10 lands. That seems more fun.
We'll move on to the next card, which is Tanzir Quentin, 3 and green blue for a 4/4 legendary creature Elder Dragon that has flying and trample. When Tanzir Quentin enters the battlefield, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. When Tanzir Quentin attacks, you may have the base power and toughness of other creatures you control become equal to Tanzir Quentin's power and toughness until end of turn. So everything else can become a 4/4 at the minimum every time you attack. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you do some fancy stuff with Tanzir themselves, you know.
And there is plenty of fancy stuff you can do. Works really well naturally with fractals because their base power and toughness is all 0/0. Same with graft creatures. Same with most hydras are either 0/0s or sometimes 0/1s. And also just like token generation. If you're dropping a whole bunch of squirrels at once, making them all base power and toughness 4/4 will get there pretty well.
That was the thing that kind of blew my mind with this commander was like, I thought it was like one creature. I thought it was like, oh, okay, Quandrix Dragon attacks and you get like your Fertilid hits for 7 or something, but it's like, oh no, Quandrix attacks and other creatures. Like, that's a lot more power out of nowhere.
Yeah, I actually, now I'm just realizing that too for the first time.
It's very,
okay, never mind.
Very aggressive, yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't know. Like, this one's kind of been like the snooze for me. Like, we had that one Simic commander we just talked about, Jazzy. I think that this is kind of like a little more boring in comparison. But now that I'm actually reading the card, I'm like, oh, okay, wait. This is good.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's like legitimately crazy how much power this thing can put out. I know like Nick is working on a list. Do you want to get into any tech that you have, any tech you found?
Well, this list comes to us from friend of the show, Alex
Oh,
Whiteclay.
cool.
So I'm reading it for the first time right now.
Oh, rad.
Uh,
Oh, thanks, Alex. I didn't realize that. Yeah, it is. I mean, honestly, I can go over a few things. Like, there's just so much +1/+1 counter tech that we've gotten over the years that is utilized very well in this list, because not only does it go on just your team and then things like Armorcraft Judge, draw you a bunch of cards, stuff like that, you also can just buff Tanzir, and if Tanzir is bigger, your team is bigger. It's kind of this like cyclical loop. So you can put counters on you guys, so they get bigger, and then you put counters on Tanzir. You can put counters on everybody. Everybody wants the counters. Master Biomancer, all of the things that do that are in this list, and all the things that make way too many tokens are in this list. Scoot Swarm, Spawn Writhe. It's pretty nuts. It just goes crazy.
Just make sure to give your stuff trample. That's how you win.
Yep.
In green? I don't know. That sounds a little
I
difficult.
know. Yeah,
like,
come on.
All right. Well, I think if anyone is ready, if everyone's ready, I think we can move on to the next commander.
yes.
Oh, yes.
And that would be Galazar Prismari. He is legend. So 2 blue-red, legendary creature, Elder Dragon. He has flying. When Galazar Prismari enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Artifacts you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. And he's a 3/4. So it kind of reminds me of that other, pretty good card, Urza, Lord High Artificer. Just a little more nerfed. But I think with the upside of having the access to treasure tokens that we've been seeing Red get a lot more, I don't think that that's really going to be too much of a downside when it comes to like, just wanting to go off and like cast a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of the best cards in Urza are also very good here. For example, like Winter Orb, Static Orb, Storage Matrix, Trinisphere, all these really nasty Staxy artifacts that turn off when tapped are, of course, fantastic when your commander gives you a method for tapping them. There's a couple fun pieces of tech, like Trail of Evidence is fantastic in this list. 2 and a blue for an enchantment. Yeah, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, investigate. So that's just another great source of easy artifacts that can then cast further spells. But it's mainly just like a spell slingery type of list, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm. I want to mention too, this isn't specifically about gameplay or anything. Oh, it is actually literally about gameplay, but not so much with Commander, where there's this weird tension between digital and physical. So like modal double face cards, which this is not, are very fun and easy to use on Arena, and they're not that fun and easy to use in paper. This is going to be the exact opposite. This is going to be people getting really upset because they tap their treasure and accidentally click tap sack instead of click tap, where in real life you would just tap your treasure and everyone knows what you're doing. You're not going to be like tap, oh no, and then put it like way over in your graveyard. So I can definitely imagine being that we're presumably for the foreseeable future going to still be in not super big events and stuff like that. Most people will get experience with this guy in digital. Just watch your clicks, everybody.
One more.
All right.
One more dragon.
Yeah.
Yes. So this next one is Velamachus Lorehold. It is 5 red-white for a 5/5 legendary creature, Elder Dragon. It has flying, vigilance, and haste. And whenever it attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to Velamachus Lorehold's power from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. All right. So before we get into the discussion, I just want to point out one very important thing, which is that most extra combat step effects do not work with this card. If they use the phrase after this main phase, they will only create an additional combat and main phase if they resolve during a main phase. So if you're using this Velomachus trigger and you see a Relentless Assault and cast it, well, you will untap your creatures, but you won't get the extra combat steps or anything like that. So it's I don't think it's going to be the next Narset Enlightened Master. There's really only like 2 cards at this time that work the way you want it to.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I can imagine there's going to be a challenge the stats on EDH Rec about that at some point in time.
Surprise, your deck doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. They've done it before. I've been like, oh no.
Yeah, it's gonna be unfortunate if someone builds that deck though and doesn't realize that, and then you take it somewhere, and then they're like, "Hey,
It's gonna
listen,
happen."
it doesn't actually." Yeah,
Mhm.
it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Just be polite about it too. Like if that does happen, if you come across that, and explain like, "Hey, unfortunately, this isn't the way that it works." So instead of being like, "You cheater," yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you guys, like, do you think that this is kind of a failure of design if it leads to people misplaying it, and if like the way you use it is really unintuitive?
Gosh, that's kind of putting the
Yes and no.
you explain.
Yes and no. It's a failure, sure, on like the players' parts for not knowing that, but then it's also a failure on Wizards' part for not letting us kind of like know that that's how it works. Like if we don't understand the rules to the point where we don't know that that's not how it works, who's to blame? Like me for not understanding your complicated rules, or for you to have such complicated rules?
Yeah, I think like because there is an easy way that they could have worded this so it would be intuitive with Narset Enlightened Master. It just, until I talked to some judges about it, I had no idea that this didn't work. And I think that the majority of players would think that Relentless Assault or whatever would work the way you'd expect it to.
Yeah, just kind of unfortunate. I mean, when we've done the interviews, when we would talk to Jules Robbins about red and splashy effects in red and like extra combats being like a thing red does, it just seems weird that like when they're trying to expand like Boros/Lorehold's space, that wouldn't be like on the table or like the a commander that looks like it obviously wants these cards doesn't. So I don't know how they are talking about that internally. Maybe they brought that up. Who knows?
You could make the counter argument that Gavin has stated that they actively tried to make Boros not the attacky
That's true.
archetype. So, I mean, that's the only excuse I can think of.
Yeah, that's true. That said, I guess to get back to Blake's point from earlier, though, I think this is the dragon that I've seen the most people talk about, just because it is so splashy and different. I guess it's splashier than what Boris usually gets, like insofar as like attack steps and stuff like that. Like free giant sorceries and stuff is a lot more than Boros has gotten in the past. But I guess did any of you expect these dragons? Like, is there one that any of you are like really excited for? I didn't expect to see these. I thought these were going to be in the precons.
Personally, that's what I thought too. I thought the commander decks were going to be like the history with like the dragons, and then like because I thought like the dragons would have been dead by now,
Yeah.
or whatever. I'm not as much of a lore guy, but so them showing up in the set was surprising, but I mean, cool.
Yeah.
I personally like the Witherbloom one. That's kind of the 2-color combination I like the most, Golgari, or like Witherbloom, I suppose. Though I did take the test on
Oh yeah.
Wizard's site, and they put me in Prismari, and I was like, I don't really want to be here. Though, like, I was like one of the artsy kids. I went to an art college, so they kind of knew, and I was like, you're right, but like I don't want you to be right. Put me in Witherbloom.
So funny.
I share the same sentiments, and like I personally I'm very hard to be. I find a difficult time like being inspired by a commander. So the few times that I do, I'm like, oh, I'll let you know. Sorry.
No, it's good.
So of these dragons, I'd say that I gravitate a bit towards Galazeth Prismari just because I really enjoy that gameplay. I was goldfishing with the list for a bit, and it's just a lot of like resource management and storming off and like tracking your count and your floating mana and all of your treasures. It's just like, you know, you're doing a lot of stuff when you're playing that deck. So that was pretty appealing to me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I feel the same way. I think the if Villamachus wasn't 7 mana, I would be pretty inclined to do that. I love me a big hasty red dragon, but I think the fact that playing a Villamachus list is going to be like, let me ramp until I can cheat out a big spell, where the Galazeth is going to be like, I am doing so many things.
Yes.
That gameplay appeals to me a little bit more.
Yeah, you get to play the most Magic.
Yeah, can you tell we both like red? It's funny. But yeah, I did not expect these dragons, and I'm happy they're here. I'm just gonna say that.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing that I'd say is I'm glad that they look like dragons, because when I kind of imagined, you know, professors are like the founders of Strixhaven, I kind of thought of them as a little more goofy, where they would be wearing like lab coats or like robes. I'm glad that these look like kick-ass dragons, you know?
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
totally. I totally get that. Yeah, I'm pretty happy about that too, now that you mentioned that. But I guess if we are good to go, I'm going to move into the plethora of cycles of commanders. Oh no, this guy is not one of the cycles.
Oh, yeah, we got one more straggler.
One more straggler. All right, so this is oh god, what a doozy of a straggler too. This is Hoffrey Ghostforge. Hoffrey is a 4/5 dwarf cleric for 3 red white, so 5 mana 4/5. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. So that's a lot.
It's a little tricky.
Yeah, that's like pretty crazy. Do you want to? I mean, there is tech. I actually haven't checked the price on this tech.
Yeah, I bought one of the, as soon as I heard about this tech, I bought one of them because it seems like the kind of thing people would buy out. But so the combo with Hoffrey Ghostforge is a sacrifice outlet and Mist Moon Griffin. So Mist Moon Griffin is 3 and a white for a 2/2 creature griffin with flying. And if, or God, I got to look at the Oracle wording, freaking old cards. Okay. So when it dies, exile Mistmoon Griffin, then return the top creature card of your graveyard to the battlefield. And so the way this is going to work is you sacrifice Mistmoon Griffin to your sack outlet. You will stack the triggers so that Hoffrey's trigger resolves first. And he will create a token that's a copy of Mistmoon Griffin. You sacrifice that token, which will put the original Mistmoon back in your graveyard. And then finally, you let the Mistmoon Griffin trigger resolve, which will put itself, since it is now the top creature card in your graveyard, back onto the battlefield. So you're exactly where you started off, except you got whatever your sack outlet generates. And that's the combo. And it notably, the Griffin is compliant with both the red and white recruiters, Imperial Recruiter and Recruiter Guard. So it might be something you can assemble a little bit more easily. There's certainly plenty of sack outlets in these colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just realized, put a Perforos God of the Forge or Impact Tremors onto the battlefield, and you're just gonna get a bunch of like loops where you deal damage to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is the kind of thing where a lot of typical Boros cards people play well with Hoffrey and his going offness. So I would not be surprised to see this a decent amount once I can go to card shops again.
Yeah, I wonder if like Eternal Scourge would be good here. The guy you can play from exile.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Oh yeah.
Just so outside of like the Mist Moon combo, it's worth noting that like Populate or Anointed Procession, just anything that allows you to copy tokens is really good here, because suddenly you have 2 Malignuses or whatever. And then Sneak Attack or Perforos might be good here as well, because you could like sneak in an Eldrazi and swing and annihilate someone, and then when you would sacrifice it instead, you kind of just get a big old token. So you kind of get to keep the things you cheat in.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, let's get into the deans. This is the first of the last 2 cycles we're going to talk about.
Yes. So we're going to start off with Plarg, Dean of Chaos. What a name. 1 red for a 2/2 legendary creature Orc Shaman, and it has tap, discard a card, draw a card. And then it also has 4 in red, tap, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary, non-land card with mana value 3 or less. You may cast that card without paying its mana value cost. Put all revealed cards not cast this way on the bottom of your library in random order. And then the backside is Augusta, Dean of Order, 2 and white for a 1/3 legendary creature, human cleric. Other tapped creatures you control get +1/+0. Other untapped creatures you control get +0/+1. And whenever you attack, untap each creature you control, then tap any number of creatures you control. That last one's a little bit complicated to understand.
Yeah.
She's the Dean of Order, but that does not sit right with the explanation of what just was said to me.
She shuffles him around. She kind of wiggles him,
Yeah. I think that Augusta is like really great as a commander for activated abilities. There's some like artifact mana dorks that you can run in a red-white deck. There's plenty of powerful creatures with tap abilities like Devout Chaplain, which lets you tap it and some other creatures or 2 other humans you control to exile an artifact or enchantment. There's things like Micaeus, like which untapping that allows you to put counters on your guys more often. It just seems like a fun commander for these types of abilities.
I was kind of looking forward to some more commanders, kind of what we got with the evil Voldemort guy. I forget his name. But where we would have had like these. Yeah, I was kind of looking forward to having more of these like legendary creatures on one side and then sorceries on the back, because that seemed to me like the flavor of Strixhaven. Because it seems like some of these would kind of work better if they were together on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I totally feel that like a lot of these could just be partner with commanders. Like I'm running other rummagers in my Augusta list, but I can't really play with Plarg because it's on the opposite side of the card. Like so many of these, and you'll see as we go through the cycle, but so many of these modal double-faced commanders really feel like they both want to be on the battlefield at the same time. And it's unfortunate that they make us choose like this. This seems like the perfect application for partner with, but instead we get something that prevents you from getting the thing you want.
Yeah, and really quickly too, kind of to harp on that, is Plarg is probably the coolest rummager we've ever seen. Like I've wanted a 2-mana rummager or since they came up with rummaging as something red gets, and all of a sudden we have Plarg, and all of a sudden it's Boros. It's Lorehold. So no longer am I allowed to play Plarg in my mono red decks. I never was able to. So that's kind of a bummer too.
Yeah. All right, I can move on to our next one. Uvilda, Dean of Perfection, 2 blue, legendary creature, Djinn Wizard. Tap, you may exile an instant or sorcery card from your hand and put 3 hone counters on it. It gains at the beginning of your upkeep. If this card is exiled, remove a hone counter from it. And when the last hone counter is removed from this card, if it's exiled, you may cast it. It costs 4 generic mana less to cast this way. And Uvilda is a 2/2. And then on the other side, you have Nasari, Dean of Expression, 3 red, legendary creature, Efreet Shaman. It has, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among these exiled cards, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, put a +1/+1 counter on Nazari, Dean of Expression. And it is a 4/4. Good to note that it doesn't have to be the cards that get exiled with Nazari too. So you could have like, the Bergie card where, the Horn side where you discard a card and then you exile 2 cards off the top of your library. And if you like cast one of those, like this will also get it to like pump itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Harnfell impulse draw, like any impulse draw is good with Nasari, which is cool.
Jessica's Will.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to get excited about these guys, honestly.
We're trying.
They're just both. I mean, they're both commanders that we already have, but like fixed and like appropriately so. Like I think if Joro Dagitu was just what Uvilda said, and if Atali was just what Nasari said, like people would like that a lot. But now we have like patched versions and they're stapled together, so it's kind of weird.
I don't know if I would really want to play these like light versions of powerful commanders. I think like the design space has been really taken up by those other guys, so I'm not very keen on building these two.
Yep. And
these are my deans, but I do not care.
Yeah.
I was going to try and come up with a rhyme, but I'm like, yeah.
Oh,
You do not deem them acceptable. I don't know.
There you go, Blake.
Not deem them. I was like, wait, but you're Golgari. And then I was like, oh, the quiz.
No. It's Witherbloom.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're right. Which actually segues into the next card pretty well.
Yes. So these next 2 Deans are Valentine, Dean of the Vein, a single black mana for a 1/1 vampire warlock with menace and lifelink. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. And then the opposite side is Lizette, Dean of the Root. 2 green for a 4/4 human druid. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain trample until end of turn. How do you guys feel about Valentine and Lizette?
The silence speaks volumes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think it's cool that Golgari is getting some cool life gain rewards. Like, I think there's something to be said for the tone deafness of like white. They're trying to pump up white, and they're giving white some stuff in the set. But then one of the things that white is like everyone talks about and has talked about the most, being given to like Golgari, it's like life gain rewards and like playable good ones. That's I feel like that's a little bit on the nose, even if like in general the cards play well. I think that these cards in particular, it's another one of those ones where I want both of them, so I'm kind of like not into playing this because like if I'm gonna be like gaining life and putting counters on things, well, you gave me a cool like Voltron guy on the front side that I can't use if I want to use the other side, so it's just not what I want to do. And then Valentine's trigger is kind of more just like hosing. Those tend not to make the board very happy.
I will come to Valentine's defense. I like this a lot. Just the fact that it's pretty easy to sort of create this like self-feeding loop. If you have a sack outlet that can kill creatures like an attrition or a stronghold assassin, or even something like a grave pact or a dictate of Erebos, just anything that allows you to turn like your creatures dying into your opponent's creatures dying works fantastically with Valentine.
Mhm.
If so, that seems pretty good to me, especially considering this commander is so cheap.
I know, that's crazy.
And then for Lizette, there's some easy combo potential with her. She goes infinite with Spike Feeder and either Workhorse or Crystalline Crawler, in that you can like remove a counter from the Spike Feeder to trigger her, and then you can remove a counter from like the Workhorse or the Crystalline Crawler to pay her cost, and then you get a +1/+1 counter on all your guys, including Lizette. So Lizette will be infinite. You get infinite life. And because you're in a black-green color identity, you have access to a lot of tutors to help you set that up.
I just have flashbacks to when all my friends hated me for playing King Makar. I had to take that list apart. But you're right. I think it's interesting. I'm was actually pretty happy to see these cards printed, even if it's the same card. I just wish they were different cards.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
So this is Kian, I think. Kiani?
Cayenne, like Diane?
Yeah, because the two N's makes a short vowel sound. Is that right? Am I doing that right? Kia, I don't know. Well, Kiani, can correct me later. Kiani, Dean of Substance. I'm going to say that one more time. Kiani, Dean of Substance, is a 2/2 elf druid for 2 and a green. They have tap, exile the top card of your library. If it is a land card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, put a study counter on it. And then they have 4 green. Create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each different mana value among non-land cards you own in exile without study counters on them. So basically, you'll have like a bunch of cards floating around that you'll reference when you make fractals, which is kind of weird. And the backside of this card is a blue card. This is who could have guessed? This is Abraham, Dean of Theory, a 3/3 bird wizard with flying for 4 mana, 2 blue. They have X blue tap, exile the top X cards of your library, and put a study counter on each of them. Then you may put a card you own in exile with a study counter on it into your hand. And I want to come out and say, this pair in particular, like all the other pairs we've talked about, they like work pretty well together, and it's kind of sad that they work so well together. This one is like, well, I want to be able to exile the card with Kiani, and then I want to be able to get the card with Abraham. Like, why can't I do both? I feel like you're dangling the carrot in front of my face, and then I just can never get it. I just have to keep walking.
This is probably the most egregious of the ones where you need both of them on the field, or you want to make sure you don't want to have to keep casting, one of them to like have the other one go off.
There is some tech that works pretty well with both of these. We kind of have mentioned before, like just like scroll rack, like being able to look at the top cards of your library is really easy to do. You got Mary's Guile and stuff like that we mentioned earlier in the episode. Those help you set up the cards that you exile with either of them, so that's pretty good. I can see how like you play your Kiani early, exile some stuff, get some lands in your hand, it dies, and then you spend 6 on Abraham to start doing that, but that just feels bad. Maybe it's more fun than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah, I like that you can sort of build your own Sprout Swarm with Kiani.
Yeah.
If you have like a Cryptolith, right, or an Earthcraft, or a Rishkar, or a Sentinel Hierophant, you can use the fractals to sort of tap for mana and make more fractals. So I think that's a neat use of her. And then because you're in a Simic color identity, you're on color for Intruder Alarm, and you can pretty easily like assemble like an engine that generates infinite mana and like infinite fractals, which seems pretty solid.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say that like if you had the chance, you can like tap Imbraham. The bird wizard.
The owl man.
Owlman. But yeah, you could then easily find like some of your win conditions in blue, like Labman, Thassa's Oracle, or like the Jace, and then just cast that. And if you have a draw spell, in hand, win the game that way. Once you've created infinite mana.
Alrighty. We got the next commander, which is Shaylee, Dean of Radiance. 1/1 legendary creature bird cleric for 1 and a white. It has vigilance and flying. You can tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that entered the battlefield under your control this turn. And then on the other side, we have Embrose, Dean of Shadow, 2 black for a 4/4 legendary creature human warlock. You can tap him to put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature. Then Embrose deals 2 damage to that creature. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. That last bit of text has me a little bit interested.
Yeah, I was looking at Embrose a bit. Like I started trying to build Embrose, and I don't know. It felt like the card drawing thing was not quite worth the squeeze. I just kind of kept looking over at like Yannick and Nakara, the 2020 commanders. It's like, oh, it's the same thing, except Nakara is cheaper than Embrose, and I get access to like the best color in Commander, and like so after like messing around with Embrose for a bit, I started looking more at Shale. I'm gonna go with Shale.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense after you said that.
Yeah, we'll try. I'm gonna try Shale. But I tried building around her, and I found that like that was more successful. I think a little bit more unique. It just kind of plays like a Mikaeus the Lunarch, but with black added, which felt pretty good to me. Like the list I'm running is very heavily white. Just runs like a lot of white token generation, and then kind of relies on black for a little bit of card advantage with things like Minions Murmurs or Necropotence, just like kind of refill your hand after you've dumped all your guys onto the board.
Overall, though, the Dean cycle just kind of seems like a little of a sleeper, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they feel to me like cards that are going to be like in a lot of ways like Commander Legends was, where some like a year from now when we can sit down at big events, you'll sit across from someone and they'll be like, yeah, this is my Shale and Embrose list, and you'll be like,
what is that?
Yeah, what is that? It'll feel a lot more like the format did a few a decade ago where like you would sit down with someone and they'd be like, yeah, this is my I don't even know what it would be, my weird Kamigawa legend, and you're like, oh, well, what does this deck do? And it was like exciting and interesting, and like there's a lot of creativity. Like that's kind of where I feel like we're at again with the thanks to like Commander Legends, and just the fact that this episode is going to be like 2 hours long and it's not even the whole set, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're just making so many we can't possibly keep track of them all now.
Exactly, and at a frequency so that we just have to keep going. So that I feel like kind of like what you said is right. Like the Dean cycle is kind of like these sleepers. We're gonna look back in some years and be like, oh, actually there is some cool stuff to do there.
All right, we can move on to the next card. Zimone, Quandrix Prodigy, green and a blue for a 1/2 legendary creature human wizard. Then has 2 activated abilities. 1 and tap, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. And then 4 tap, draw a card. If you control 8 or more lands, draw 2 cards instead. Guys, I don't think blue and green have ever done this before in their entire cycle of life.
Simone's the groundbreaking Simic commander that we've always needed.
Yes, yeah. No, she reads a lot like a fixed Thrasios, which is something a friend of ours mentioned, and I definitely see that. It's interesting to see that they really want you to know that the 8 or more lands thing is a theme with the Quandrix. But as far as a deck goes, I don't really think there's much here.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many other awesome Simic commanders. Like, why do we want to play this one? Like, maybe someone has a good reason, but yeah.
I mean, I think she's, cute, and I feel like people will relate to her as a character, though. And so that I can definitely see if you want to like build around the kind of like that idea and make it more like mathy theme. I mean, I'm not really a math person, but you know, someone is.
My favorite part is the card in the main set that has her just like kicking somebody's butt. Like
Oh, yeah,
her
that's a
actual
cool
card
card.
herself is like not as cool.
All right, we can move on to Rutha, Mercurial Artist, 1 blue red, legendary creature Orc Shaman. She's a 1/4. 2 mana. Return Rutha to its owner's hand. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy.
This is a really sweet one. There's a lot of combo potential with this. When I first saw it, I was a little bit skeptical, but there's actually a fair bit you can do with this. I think one of the cutest synergies is with Desperate Ritual and Through the Breach. So you can splice a Through the Breach onto Desperate Ritual and then use Rutha to copy that. And what's going to happen is Rutha is now in your hand. The copy goes on the stack. That copy resolves. You drop in Rutha off of the Through the Breach, and then you have 3 red mana, which you can then use to pay Rutha's cost, bounce her back to your hand. So each time you go up 1 red mana and just repeat for infinite red mana. So that seems pretty cool. Another thing you can do is if you have a sneak attack and a ritual that adds at least 4 mana, so like a Seething Song maybe, or a Jessica's Will, something like that, then you can keep bouncing Rutha back to your hand, dropping her back in with sneak attack, and then copying that ritual over and over for infinite mana. There's just a lot that you can do with her. She's definitely more interesting than I thought when I first saw her.
Yeah, we'll talk about another card later, like Cackle with Power, which would be another good way to kind of finish out the game, just doing a lot of math and dealing damage to people. I think it's good that, you know, blue-red is typically like your Spellslinger archetype, and these can go find you your instants and sorceries that you'll probably need to like get that train going.
I just think it's incredibly cool that something like this exists. Like I've wanted this card for a very long time. I didn't even care if it was like legendary, but it's here. It's cool.
This next commander is Quintorius Field Historian. 3 red white for a 2/4 legendary creature Elephant Cleric. Spirits you control get +1/+0, and whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. How do you guys feel about this commander?
It's definitely different than most Boros commanders in terms of like it's making tokens and like buffing them up. I do kind of like this direction that they've taken where it's like, oh, the Boros in this world are much more about the graveyard. They care much more about history and like what's the term, like archaeology, and so they're doing a lot more like grave shenanigans and exile shenanigans.
I was just gonna say Underworld Breach is a good card for this deck, considering like if you're gonna just, I mean, Underworld Breach is a good card in just any red deck, so I don't feel like I need to quite say that, but this would just be able to, Underworld Breach would just allow you to make tokens for every card you exile to then, you know, cast a card off of the escape cost.
One thing that I think would work pretty well in this deck is Enduring Renewal, a sack outlet, and a 0 mana creature. Like that's a combo that works pretty well with Quintorius. And so for essentially how it works is Enduring Renewal is 2 white for an enchantment. And you basically, if you draw a creature, you have to mill it. So that's not ideal, but the exciting part of the card is whenever a creature is put into your graveyard from play, return it to your hand. So if you have like an Ornithopter or a Kobold or something like that and a sacrifice outlet, then you sack the creature, it gets bounced back to your hand with Enduring Renewal, you get whatever your sack outlet generates, and your Quintorius is going to trigger, and that's going to give you a token. So even if your sack outlet isn't really doing anything productive, even if it's just like a Martyr's Cause or a Fanatical Devotion or something like that, you're still going up on these tokens. You're still getting you're still getting infinite guys, and you should be able to win from there. And the nice thing about this combo is there's a lot of sack outlets in these colors. There's a lot of 0 mana creatures in these colors. So really all you need to work hard to find is the Enduring Renewal.
Yeah, I think it lends itself to combo, and I think what Blake was saying, like, it seems like a strange new direction for Boros, probably because this is just Tormod from the Commander Legends. Like a instead of a 4/2 that makes 2/2s, this is a 2/4 that makes 4/2s. But honestly, I think just shifting it into red white like this is actually way cooler. It has the same problem I think Tormod does, which is it's incredibly hard not to just combo, like Nick was saying. Like when I was brewing lists for Tormod, I had a hard time not just going infinite, and not like in the deck building process. It was really hard to cut cards that made me go infinite because I'm like, oh, but then it's really good when I'm not going infinite, but then I could go infinite, but then my friends might hate me. That's exactly what Contorius feels like too. That said, I think if you do make a fair version, if you are just kind of like getting value through the breach, like flashing back cards, whatever it might be, that I am really excited to see this. And I think it's really cool, like the whole lore hold concept of like, oh, we study history, and what better way than to talk to dead people, like to find the dead person and talk to them. Like that's a really cool thing to me. So I'm a big fan of Quintorius, which I think brings us to our is this our oh no we got two more. Okay, I was gonna say our last guy, but it's not our last guy. Not quite.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us about him.
Yeah, so this is Killian, Ink Duelist. Killian is a 2/2 human warlock for white-black, so just 2 mana. They have lifelink, menace, and spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 generic less to cast. So notable, this is your like auras, this is pump spells, but this is also removal. It's a pretty big discount on like a certain subset of spells.
Yeah, this kind of does has me interested a little bit because Voltron is like my favorite archetype personally. So I've kind of just been trying to think of, can you like, obviously it's like if you're in the right pod, you can like make almost anything work. But I'm trying to figure out like if there's enough like white auras that can target Killian, because auras do target, and if there's enough like tutors and draw in black to make this work, because it is really nice that it's like such a low mana value to cast. You can get it down so early, just start stacking on a bunch of stuff early. I'm not sure if there's enough. I'm a little bit interested in this.
Yeah, there's definitely some cool things you can do with it. Hatred, for example, strikes me as particularly good. You can so easily curve a turn 2 Killian into a turn 3 Hatred, pay 19 life, and then when he connects and you get your life link, you just get all of that life back. And in the process, you get to kill someone. So that seems very good. There is a lot of spells that target that grant infect, for example. So like Phyresis, there's Tainted Strike, there's Glistening Oil, and all of those just cut down the number of turns you need to hit someone with your Killian in order to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's pretty effective as a Voltron commander. It seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I think like Blake, if you do want to make this Voltron, I think you'll have a really good time. Like the fact that he's cheap, that he has built-in evasion, the fact that he has built-in cost reduction, like this just seems like actually I would assume this is a blast to play, especially if you between the tutors in black and the tutors in white and the aura recursion in white. Wait, could you all hear my cat run through a crinkle tube? Okay. Between all the tutors in black, all the aura tutors in white, the aura recursion, enchantment recursion in white, like I think this is just an awesome list. I think it's super fun.
I was a little confused because, you said, cast hatred on turn 3, and I was thinking like, maybe in like Magical Christmas Land, you'll have 5 mana every turn 3, but I don't think that's likely. And then I realize, oh no, wait, you're going to be targeting it for a discount. So actually, yeah, this is much better than I kind of thought it out to be.
Yeah, it's like one of those commanders where you look at it and you're like, oh, that's pretty simple, because it's only like 4 lines of text, 2 of them are single words, and you're
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then you like think about it and you're like, oh, like,
Mhm.
oh wow, which is awesome. I love when that happens.
Right. I think that's an excellent point where I feel like this deck can, if you're doing like the more Voltron-y or even like using infect cards here and there, I think it'll do great. Like it might take out 1 or 2 people really easily. I'm just questioning whether you can get that like 3rd or 4th player out. That's like part of the hardest part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a challenge for any Voltron deck for sure.
Oh, preaching to the choir, man. Okay. Well, with that, we'll move on to the very last one we have here.
Oh yeah.
Dina, Soul Steeper, black and a green for a 1/3 legendary creature, Dryad Druid. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. And then 1 and sacrifice another creature. Dina gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. What do you guys think here?
Well, notably, it combos with Exquisite Blood in order to win you the game. That seems pretty good.
Yeah. 2-card combo.
Yeah, not bad.
Mm-hmm.
You could also, I'm generally not in love with this sacrifice ability. I think that like adding power is usually not that good, especially when it runs out at end of turn. But there are situations where that could be enough to get there. Like if you cast a Phyrexian Dreadnought and then sacrifice it in response to the ETB trigger,
Mm-hmm.
then you just need to like Berserk or Tainted Strike Adina and you can kill someone. But like, that might be a little bit Magical Christmas Land. That's a lot to go right.
Yeah.
I think, like, as someone who's had Jared, like, Golgari Lichlord list since the inception of that card, it actually, I don't think it's, I think Nick is correct in that that is the worst thing to build around, but I actually don't think it's that hard to pull off. There's a lot of, oh no, what's the card? I should have wrote it in the notes. I thought I would just remember. The sorcery that you cast from hand with buyback that reanimates something.
Corpse Dance?
Corpse Dance, thank you. Yes. So like you could Corpse Dance, even in this set, there's a big creature that you could Corpse Dance that has 11 power for cheap. Like play one time, sack it, give her 11 power. Like there's a lot of things in green that give trample. There's a lot of things in black that give evasion. I think the most notable thing is that Dina really shows us that they have stopped caring about cards comboing with Exquisite Blood.
Because we got like veto so recently.
Yeah, I mean Veto, and there's just been a bunch of other cards over the years, and I think we'll keep going. I think what they've done is kind of like with Kiki Jiki, where they'll go like, well, cat's already out of the bag, why not print another one?
I think that's true.
The only thing I'm gonna just add real quick is the card that you were mentioning, Zach, is Daemogoth Titan. It's the Golgari, Golgari, 4 hybrid mana symbols, and has like the 11/10, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That one?
yeah, it's the 11/10 for 4.
Yeah, that card's pretty cool.
Well, we'll be able to talk about it a lot more in our next episode when we get onto the main deck cards in Strixhaven. But let's sort of wrap this up, talk a bit about what we think of the commanders we've seen so far.
Mhm.
What is everyone's favorite commander? What do you think about the commanders overall in this set?
That is such a good question. Oh man. I think I'm still thinking. I think I need a moment to really gauge look into my soul.
I'll go first. I think
Yeah.
we just talked about it. It's that black white potential Voltron dude who reduces your stuff by 2. I'm a sucker for like any Voltron deck, and I think this would be a good challenge for me. You know, Voltron typically is not in just black and white colors. So I'm personally interested in that one. As far as the legendaries in this set as a whole, I do like the direction that they've taken red white, and the Dean cycle I'm not as big of a fan of, and I think there's some cool, like, no matter who you are, I think you'll probably find something that you like here.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Exodus personally. This is probably my favorite commander from the set. I just really like playing the Mardu piles of removal, and it's great that I can get a lot of value while I'm, making sure no one else gets to play Magic. And like, it's got the combo potential on top of it. That's really cool. Really, all of the like legendary on one side, sorcery on the other. I think those are all pretty interesting. But again, I'll agree with you on not being a huge fan of the Dean cycle. It just feels like you're prevented from utilizing the synergy that these two halves have with each other. It seems like it's a mechanic that's really designed for 60 card Magic.
Yep.
So that like subsequent copies of your legend won't be dead cards. And that's really unfortunate when Commander is really one of the primary ways that people engage with the game. So I feel like Legends should be designed more with Commander in mind.
Something I think that should be said, because I've gotten into debates with people about this before, is like commanders, like legendary creatures that they print in standard sets. Like they've said that they have fans outside of Commander, like Wizards. Morrow talks about that. Like there are people who like legendary creatures but don't like Commander, and I'm like, who who are you talking about? But that's kind of besides the point. I think like it is very easy, and I think the uncommon cycle here really points that out, because like how many of those are bangers just like on the surface, like pretty much 4 out of 5 of them build into like a unique deck of some sort. Like Dina can get big and hit somebody, like Contorius makes like these cool spirits by doing something Boros has never done before, and like Rutha copy spells and you can really easily combo out and all this stuff. So I think like the idea that if you're going to design a commander, you can make it work for Commander is not like a hard one to execute on. And I think the last 2 years have shown us that now that we've gotten like at least a cycle of Legends or 3 in every set for the last like few years that has shown us that that's more or less possible. Again, lets me echo both of you who also don't like the Dean cycle. But all that said, I think mine's going to come out of left field because I hadn't really been mentioning it a lot as we were talking about it. But I think the one that intrigues me the most is Tanzir Quandrix, the Simic Dragon. Just because I've been trying for years to make like a blue-green, like I saw Pure and Toothy and was like, oh, this is it. This is my +1/+1 counters deck. And it like was never what I wanted. Like it was always more fun just to flicker Toothy than to do things with Pure. And I think Tanazar actually offers me the gameplay that I want, where I'm like, okay, I can have a bunch of little guys with counters, and then instead of like trying to proliferate and make them big, I can just attack. So the reward of playing with all these +1/+1 counter guys and these like shambling mounds or whatever, or not shambling mounds, but the guys that enter with just some +1/+1 counters on them and fractals and hydras and stuff like that, like is pretty strong in a Tanazir list. So that's actually something that I'm looking forward to giving a shot.
I think for me personally, but in general, I think they did a pretty good job with none of these being too busted. They're all kind of in a very interesting direction that we haven't quite seen before, so it feels a little fresh. The one that I think I gravitate towards most is Belladross, Witherbloom, just because I'm like a sucker for dragons, a sucker for green black. Even though their stupid quiz told me I'm blue red, I think I'm gonna maybe work around trying to build a Witherbloom deck.
You'll show them.
Yeah, and just because I don't think you guys mentioned it, but the Dean cycle is not that great.
Oh yeah, someone should probably
thank you
say
for
that.
bringing that up. Appreciate it. Very courageous of you.
Yeah, someone had to say it. They gotta know. They gotta know. Don't do this again.
Yeah.
Belladross is a really great choice, though. I gotta say, just looking at it, that is probably the most Halloween magic art I've ever seen.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rad. Yeah, I think she's a pretty close like second for me, because as much as I'm excited to play with the red ones, especially on like arena, where like I'm not super into playing Gladiator quite yet. Which is a fan format. It's 100 card singleton on arena. I pretty much just am really lazy and will just punch in a game of Brawl, or like if a friend is on Historic Brawl or something, or if the queues are up. So I'm excited for playing Brawl with the red dragons, but I just don't think I don't like playing commanders that make me feel bad when I'm not comboing. You know, when it's like obvious that the best line is comboing, it makes me hurt inside, because I'm like, oh, I'm losing to myself, which is not good. But if I'm in Brawl, then Galazeth is like, you only have this many options. Don't feel bad, bud. Tap those. Don't sack the treasures. Just tap them. Just tap them. It's the right one, or maybe the left one. Who knows? Who knows what button it's going to be? But I think we did it for now. We got through the legendary creatures.
Mm-hmm.
If you are listening, please let us know your thoughts, your feelings. If we missed anything, card interactions, or just say hi. I'm pretty sure you could drop in at the Wizard staff and do the exact same thing. And I'm going to speak for Guy and Blake right now and say that they probably would love that. So
Yeah. If you have any praise, give it to Commander Theory. If you have any complaints, come over to the Wizard Staff podcast.
Oh wow, that's so benevolent of you. That's so great. Thank you.
We can handle
We're
it.
willing to take any criticism, good or bad.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we're gonna have another episode about the main deck cards. We're hopefully gonna release this like Legends one first, and yeah, just let us know what you think. We hope, if you're still listening, that you had a good time. And yeah,
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we will talk to you in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
hey, what is up, everyone? This has been a very long episode. I want to say thank you to Guy and Blake one more time for doing this with us. It's been a lot of fun, and there's more fun to be had. So this was the Legendary Creatures episode, the Commanders episode. Next week, we are going to release the main deck cards, and that will also be on our feed. But the week after that, or sometime soon, we're going to release an episode kind of pointing you to the Wizard Staff podcast, and also it's going to have me and Nick's classic predictions for what cards are going to make an impact, and we're going to check up on how we did last time. So we're going to try and make it interesting. We're going to try and make it just a brief little quick thing, because holy cow, these episodes can get kind of long. So if that sounds good, tune in. We're going to have video episodes uploaded. They're probably not going to be at the same release schedule, just because it is a lot more work. And that's it. We care about you guys a lot. Thank you for listening. And specifically, thank you to our Patreon patrons. If you heard something in this episode you liked, didn't like, some tech, you want to correct us on a pronunciation, you know, it only costs $1 to yell at us on the internet in a place that we will see. And honestly, a bunch of other people who are really awesome will see too. The Discord that we've kind of cultivated is awesome, and I love all the people in there. It's like actually a really big highlight of my day talking to everybody. So without further ado, thank you to our Patreon patrons. They are Gustav, Ryan, Mark, Amond, Addison, Mason, Rick, Laser, Raphael, Charlotte, the Whiteclays, Hannah, Anthony, Andy, Dylan, James, Justin, Logan, Roger, Evan, Bryce, Dylan, Benjamin, Jamie, Matthew, Jason, Kyle, Brandon, Kydell, Jeremy, Russell, Troy, Dylan, Walter, Leo, Ian, John, Tom, and Kevin. Thank you all so much for listening, for supporting, and we hope that you enjoy the next few episodes. Bye!
If any of you theorists want to get in touch with us, I am at Commander Theory on Twitter and Tumblr, and Zach is at Fat Bartleby on Twitter. Our theme song is Lincoln Continental by Entropy, and you can check him out on SoundCloud. Until next time,
we're going back to the drawing board.